Quiet on the set. Pick 73.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Driving Relationships podcast, one of the fastest growing automotive podcasts in the country, where we talk about the car business, the people business, and everything in between. My name is Austin Conroy.
And I'm Zach.
Zach, what do you say we put a dealer plate on this thing and get going, huh?
Are we using a magnet, or are we actually going to bolt it on the right way?
Whatever. The magnets will fly out.
Well, if we're with our guest today, Trey Rorman, we might as well not even put a dealer plate on and just ride dirty. So.
Ride dirty.
That's right.
When you're behind.
We have a very, very special guest today, Trey Rorman. Trey, I usually save the hard questions for when we get going, but I'm going to ask you, this seems like a very improbable story. How did you get into the car business?
Well, 1989 in August. No, I was born. Man, so obviously family business. I mean, that's how it all started, right? I tell people, unlike my dad who says, how long have you been with the company? I've been with the company 60 plus years. Well, I was around the business my first 18 years of life, but starting in the business really, post high school year, started selling cars right before I turned 19. And I don't, people ask me too, like, why did you always feel like you were going to get into it? And like, I never had, outside the typical young boy dreams of playing a professional sport, I never had another industry that I was kind of attracted to, or felt like I needed to go to school to prepare myself. So kind of always has been what I felt like, not my identity, but my earthly identity was going to be in.
So talk a little bit about that in the sense of like, your dad necessarily through you growing up wasn't in the car business always. He kind of ventured around. Obviously, your grandfather and Bob Rorman was,
right,
being the automotive kind of mogul of this Midwest area, Indiana, Illinois.
Yeah.
So kind of talk us, what was it about car business that even led you to potentially look into it? Because I know your dad did dabble in it, but give us that kind of story.
Yeah, well, when you think about grandparents, all of our grandparents are a little bit different of why we love them. And one thing I loved about my grandfather, again, I'm talking as a kid, one thing I loved about him was he always looked like he was having fun. Whether it's the goofy commercials or he's sitting in the bleachers watching my basketball game, like joking around with people, and you guys know me, I like to have fun. I mean, I'm not
up for debate,
Mr. Stiff corporate guy, and like I want my work to be fun. And so seeing Grandpa in his fun mood, it seemed like all the time because I wasn't in those behind closed doors meetings. I was attracted to doing work that, brought yourself some joy. And so I don't know, I think that's one piece of it. There's a lot to there.
So there wasn't necessarily a pressure to get into the family business, right? Did they kind of leave it up to a choice for all the grandkids, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, my grandpa always said, "You'd be great. You're a natural salesman," right? But my parents really left it up to me and my brothers. I mean, by no means did we ever really feel pressured, and that is a common question of like, "Hey, did you feel like you could venture out?" And like, yeah, my parents, encouraged us to do what we want. So there was never a pressure that I'd at least come try to see if I could either pass or fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you go get started in the car business. What's that look like?
It was your typical,
Flashback.
Here's the
Think
keys.
back.
Did you have to interview and like do all that stuff?
Hi, I'm Trey Rorman. I'll take your job.
The biggest hiccup in the interview process for me was my driving record.
Oh, here we go.
So my driving record, of all things, was something that the current HR manager, now our CFO, Tina Antonetti, she was like, "Hey, so we got an issue, Ryan. Your brother's driving record, it doesn't qualify under insurance."
And how old are you? How old at this time?
I was 18.
Okay. So a couple speeding tickets?
Yep. I got 2 speeding tickets right out of the gates, and then it slowed down a lot. But
It had to, otherwise it was loss of license.
but I was losing. I'm racking up points.
It's pretty bad when you almost can't get a job in the family business because of your driving.
It took Grandpa calling the insurance company and saying that he was going to self-insure me.
Woo, babe.
So I remember that call from Grandpa saying, you never told me you drove like me, you know? And so that was the hardest part is just like, I'm there day 2, day 3 selling cars. And she comes and tells me, hey, until we get your grandpa to sign off on this, you need to stay out of cars.
Wow.
You're not insured.
Wow.
So that was the hardest part of the
So
interview
you're 18
process.
years old. What year is this? Where are you at? What store? Obviously, you referenced Ryan. So
Yeah,
working
so
for him.
Ryan, let's see, Ryan was the used car manager at the time
Okay.
at Schaumburg Honda. That would have been 2013, summer
Gotcha.
of 2013. No, that's wrong. Cut that. Summer of 2009 was the first
Gotcha.
time in the car business. Barack Obama was president. We were starting clunkers.
Cash for Clunkers.
There we go.
Cash for
That was a fun
Clunkers.
program.
Yeah.
So your first selling experience was Cash for Clunkers.
That was the last month in the business, and my first summer was
So-
Cash for Clunkers.
So, do you remember your first car deal?
I do.
Shout out. Do you still know the name? Shout out. The
I
customer?
do not know the
Oh.
gentleman's name. No.
Your commission?
Yeah.
Do you remember the commission? But typical
The
sales.
general manager at the time was John Barrett.
Okay.
And he came up to me and he goes, you know, I think you're going to be good because the first car you sold was the first time we made gross on a Honda Insight.
Oh,
Wow.
that's a good story.
Setting
Because
records.
The Honda Insight was a lot like some EVs right now.
Yeah.
You got to give them away. And so, you know, added paint protection, pinched some trades, you know how you do it, and made a profit. So that hooked me. I think I made like $700 on that deal. But
That's all
the
it takes.
GM was paying additional percentages on the Honda Insight. So,
Right.
But I've always, you know,
You've
navigated.
always worked your pay
You
plan
got
from
to.
day one.
I mean, navigate your pay plan to maximize. So,
You hear that, everybody? Navigate your pay plan.
You got to navigate it.
Good insight. So I'm so intrigued by, you know, obviously your grandfather's story, just his rags to riches, literally growing up on dirt floors to building this empire, right? And then you start selling cars. So there's this dynamic of he's your grandpa, but he's also this extremely sharp business entrepreneur. What kind of stories do you have for us? Just working for your grandpa. What was that like? How did you balance, you know, the family dynamic and the work? Was he two different people? You know, in work and outside
And
of work?
remember, this is the Driving Relationship podcast, so we know family gets to be messy at times. So feel free to share.
It gets hot. It gets hot. You know, Grandpa was, you know, we talk about our values now, and he was transparent. Like, he didn't hold in his suit jacket the way he was feeling about you. But I think that's hard for a lot of people to feel. So I appreciated that because one of the things I dislike about human beings is that it's hard. They're afraid to tell you how they're feeling. Well, like Grandpa would call, sing me happy birthday, and then the next day call me and tell me how bad I am at running a store. So like there is definitely no transition time between one call to another. But he was super transparent in the way he felt that you were doing for him and the company and how you're performing. So I would say transparency is definitely one of the things I appreciated about him, which was hard to hear sometimes, you know? And so I do have some voicemails that we can pull up that, you know, can kind of just reflect on like, wow, he was real. Like it was not my grandson's running the store, so I'm just going to worry about my other 25 dealerships and let him run it to the ground. Like he had expectations for, you know, my dad, my brothers, myself, my cousins.
So you go from selling Schaumburg Honda, and when obviously we referenced grandfather, you talked about running a store. When did you get that first opportunity to really run a store and work directly with Mr. Rohrman?
Yeah, so my first time actually having the keys to the castle, if you will, was really December 2012.
Okay.
When we were, you know, transitioning a new store too.
Yeah.
So there was that added pressure, like, hey, I just invested $12 million. Don't screw it up.
Good luck. And you're 20-some years old?
I was 22.
So more than ready to
I
handle
was,
a $12
I was
million
ready. I had a lot of
facility.
experience. Great leadership classes. I've read a lot of books. So, no. So, yeah, December 22, or no, cut that. December of 2012 was the first opportunity that I really got to run a store and necessarily, like, be working to influence the KPIs that my
Yeah.
grandpa cared about, right? Like, I mean, yeah, I was selling cars, and he loved to hear how many I personally had out. But like at the end of the day, he's running the company. That KPI, how many cars Trey sold, didn't necessarily
For sure.
fall on his little book, right? So,
But there was a lot in that little book too.
it was full of gadgets and KPIs and numbers. He was the number guy. So that was the first time.
So 2012 all the way through 2019, even early 2020, correct?
Yeah.
So share with the kind of the listeners that relationship that Austin even requested and asked about. How did that shift from the guy that always had fun to now the boss? I know you referenced the birthday calls to the voicemails of production performance. Share a tough conversation that you may have had with him. Share an experience where you look back and go, that shaped who you were.
You know, one of my favorite conversations or difficult experiences, it was in my first year, because I know what house I was living in. It was like 1:30 in the morning, and my phone was ringing off the hook, and I answered it because it's the boss. And so I answered it. My wife's half asleep, and he's telling me, I just got off the phone with a customer. Okay, 1:30 in the morning. I just got off the phone with a customer. She's really upset and needs some answers. Will you call her? And I said, yeah, I'll call her in the morning. And he said, but if you wait till the morning, you're just like everybody else. You know, Trey, I just got off the phone with her, so she's up. Don't call her in the morning, call her now. And if you can't do it, I'll call her back. And so like there's that positive pressure that, you know, I refer to sometimes, that he was really good at. Like it was always this positive pressure, whether it was the pressure to be at the store when deals are happening or to, you know, make sure I don't have 4 Toyota Corollas parked next to each other in the front row. So like it's all those little things, or communication, like, hey, she's up at 1:30. You need to call her now. And it's that time kills car deals mentality where do it now or I'm going to do it for you.
I love it, and I think it shows, you know, some of the legacy he has just in terms of how much he loved customers and loved interacting with customers. Like, what about that experience shapes, you know, how you treat the business today in your role and in that customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I probably miss most in my current roles, because I just don't necessarily have those daily interactions with customers, and missing hearing about how the good things about the car that they're enjoying around their family. Like, it was just the other day I was cleaning my office, and I have a hand sewn tissue box that has a Prius logo and my name on it. And like, that was a customer that I had sold multiple Priuses to, and she made that for me. Like those moments where like customers literally don't just call to complain. They actually come in to see like, hey Trey, I heard you had your first kid. How's it going? Right? Like those moments don't really happen anymore. And so those are some touch points I'd say that I miss. That made working in the business, you know, now it's mostly employee interactions, which is good. But you don't necessarily get that end result customer.
Which had to be a hard transition, because you talk about the work always being fun. And I would assume that in your day-to-day operations now, sometimes those daily conversations you're having are not fun. So how did that all shift? When did you take this new role and this opportunity, and how has that shifted your day-to-day fun level?
So summer 2019 was when I moved away from the daily customer interaction.
Gotcha.
And kind of just took this new shift of, you know, we're looking not just the customers that show up at Bob Room Toyota now. Now it's, hey, the 150 customers that show up in Indiana's dealerships today. Like that's just a whole different animal, because you can't be everywhere. You guys know that. And like, you know, when you're running a store, the greatest way to do it quick is get engaged and jump in the experience. And you can't do that in my role. So really, emphasis then started to turn on me as far as like, okay, I have to do it through our leadership team now, and not personally try to save the ship before it hits the iceberg, maybe.
So talk us through some of that, because obviously, if you can't be touching the the customers every day, but with the employees. So what have you been doing recently are you trying to change culture? Are you trying to change, mindset, motivation, make it fun for the employees? Take us there. What are you working on?
Well, one of my favorite taglines, if you will, is the customer experience will never supersede the employee experience. So think about that. We talk about CSI scores. We talk about positive reviews. Like, if your employees won't write a positive review about the Roman Auto Group, will your customer write a positive review about their experience with that employee that doesn't have a good sentiment score right now for his manager, right? So I think that's one thing that we have to take ownership of at a, snorkeling. I like to say I snorkel. I don't have time to scuba dive into each store. So when I'm snorkeling and talking to the general managers or directors or, top level leadership of the dealership, are their employees satisfied working for Bob Erman Honda or Bob Erman Toyota? Like, because until that, level is hit, it's going to be hard to really get better at delivering on the customer experience.
So what are some, some different ways that you're coming up with to support employees, whether it's in stores, out of stores, walk us through that.
I think some different ways that I try to connect with employees are really through, it's hard, right? Because physically, my dealerships that I, am involved with are 2.5 hours in a triangle. So there's a lot of miles between my stores. So I have to figure out how to do it via the telephone. And so, phone calls, text messages, emails. That's the way that I have found, like, technology allows me to be influential at the right point and the right time with the right leader. So,
and I think one of the ways, just to point to, like, making it fun, these national days that you started celebrating, walk us through that. Because I think that's a great way to show employees that you care, and probably something that you started out as, this could be something interesting, right?
Yeah, one of the roles that, in 2019, when I transitioned away from the customer experience and, like, actually seeing smiles necessarily on a customer taking delivery or us fixing their car the right way, right, was employees having fun, right? So back to that, customer experience won't outweigh the employee experience. Thinking outside the box. So, like, we do more than sell and service cars.
For sure.
And trying to have communication that lets the everyday social media scroller see that in action. Then it's like, how do we do that? Well, we've got to actually start establishing roles and cadence and consistency to what that can look like. And I think national days, because there's some really weird national days, they can be easy for our team to really, like, get excited about. And, like, hey, if it's how do you dunk your Oreo cookie, right? Like, how much time, resources does that really take?
Well, resources, I could put away a couple Oreos.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to participate in that.
What's your best national day so far? Which one sticks out to you for viewers to understand?
I would say my favorite national day so far is probably the National Pie Day. Yeah. And the reason is because I had the most pushback from general managers. And I loved it because...
Why was the pushback, though?
Yeah,
it seems dumb.
Wait a minute.
National Pie Day.
Get a little farther in here, because you didn't just have National Pie Eating Day. What did you spin it as?
So National Pie Eating Day, I wanted it to become a pie eating contest.
And there's the pushback.
Without hands, fork, or utensils. And so, again, just kind of being weirdo,
Yeah.
a little bit different. And, not everybody is willing to screw this up in the middle of the day and get in their head knee deep in, apple pie. So
With crumble you had.
yeah,
That was a
and
bad-
it was at a training. Well, in Lafayette, it worked out great because it was at a training event.
It was a bad
We
life choice,
had
though.
150
Yeah.
salespeople
Minimum.
watching at lunch. 200 maybe watching.
Apple pie with crumble on top. That was
It
a
was
bad,
hard.
bad life choice.
Once you got through the crust, it was just wet and wild.
Yeah. I remember when the National
There's a
Days.
sound bag right there.
Yeah. When the National Days came out, I thought was one of the stupidest ideas I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
I really did. And then
I
I
can understand
remembered the National Eat Outside Day.
Yeah.
And I was over at Kia and they brought Chick-fil-A, and just watching all the employees and the looks on their face, like you said, what you miss in the customers was like, wow, there's something here. And, take that a year ago to now, my family, we celebrate all the national days at home too.
Yeah.
National Oreo Day, National Grilled Cheese Day.
Yep.
So yeah, we love it. My kids love it. So I thought that was one of those initiatives that's extremely creative and innovative that, personally, I was like, this is so dumb.
Yeah, there's no dollar ROI on it that
No.
you can literally be like, okay, now it's a KPI and I can measure whether it works or not. But at the end of the day, I think what it does is it helps us in a fast-paced business slow down for maybe an hour, maybe 3. If the leadership has to get a grill going, it's going to take 90 minutes to 2 hours. But it slows us down to turn our eyes maybe off our desk and off our email accounts and off the product and look at our employees and go, hey, if John can get his mind off of how far behind he is on repair orders just for a lunch and enjoy a grilled cheese with some hot tomato soup, he might check in with a different mentality that, at the end of the day is measurable by him.
We saw that firsthand we did the National Chocolate Chip Day. I think it was last month, earlier this month. And there was 3 or 4 individuals that I don't talk to on a daily basis here at this store that had competed and got involved in it and had come to my office 3 or 4 different times to ask rules. And it was just that open opportunity to have a conversation that I hope moving forward that they don't fear coming in and saying, hey, can I tell you what's going on with my life versus, hey, can you tell me what I'm going to be judged on in my chocolate chip cookie? So, yeah, it's definitely been a unique kind of shift in the automotive industry. And I would tell anyone listening that the impact it's made has been extremely surprising. Once we all got past kind of that, this is so weird, so awkward. And I would have to say that the National Pie Eating Day was definitely the one that kind of shoved everyone across
It's an interesting one.
the finish line.
It's probably why it, checks as one of my favorites is it was one that had a pushback. And a lot of times I measure by the amount of pushback, because you're really disrupting somebody's routine.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times disrupt the routine to create a new habit.
And I think what's cool is been able to see the general managers and the store leadership. They've jumped on board, and you mentioned like Zach was rolling the grill out the other day.
He's
going to be
dressing up. I mean, he's bringing custom Yetis with milk.
Cookie Monster hat.
I
with the
hope you
cookie
can
tasting.
drop that picture
You
in
did.
on this
You did.
podcast
I
to
know.
show
I
how
thought that was
goofy he
going to
looked.
be. I thought that was going to be my national holiday of everything I've ever enjoyed, and I was so sick afterwards because not the cookies that were made; it was the quantity of cookies consumed.
Yeah.
And I don't know next year if I'll partake in the individual cookie judging of 17 different cookies. So, Trey, talk a little bit about present day automotive and where we are today. I think I don't think we've mentioned to the viewers you have 11 rooftops, depending on how you break them out in the state of Indiana. Share a little bit about what's going on in the Fort Wayne market, the Indianapolis, Lafayette market, and just kind of what do you see the automotive industry today from your position?
Yeah, so one thing we love about the business is that it changes every 90 days. Faster than that, but really, when we talk regional locations or brands, I think every 90 days the industry allows us opportunities to change to it. And right now, I would say we're navigating through EV, what that product mix looks like in the Midwest where there's not a high demand for it. How do we manage floor plan costs and still being able to meet that? How do we navigate We have 8 dealerships out of the 11 being, under remodel right now.
Mm.
And like the amount of infrastructure required for EV. So like how much do we really need to invest in order to meet EV demand? So I think EV
sure.
right now is definitely one. And then I would say another one is, new car incentives and how that is with, again, we're heading into a presidential election. And typically the second half of the year in a presidential election is a little less, it's not as easy, right? And so what does success look like in the potential? And again, do you overreact to historical data points? And then advertising's back.
Yeah, for sure.
We've spent 2 to 3 years where like we really didn't have to spend a whole lot of budget on filling the service drive, growing customer pay, traffic, selling used cars. So navigating where we spend our dollars right now is pretty heavy right now, I'd say, on my mind, because again, I want to be a steward. I want to try to teach and encourage general managers to make good decisions. But sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision, and it's how do we navigate the right risk for advertising dollars right now?
Yeah, I think you know a lot of things, like just the environment of the car business right now. Obviously, margins are shrinking.
Yeah.
Right. Inventories are starting to come back. So, what was that strategy like last year versus this year? Just in terms of like your product mix. Let's just say like new and used vehicles, and maybe some of the online pricing strategies. What are you really working through as your hot topics here?
Yeah. So I would say one of the things that I failed on, probably the heaviest financial impact that I've ever failed, heaviest financial impact, was about this time last year. I was pushing every dealership to be 100 used car store. And I remember beating that into my messaging. Nobody is less than 100. And what that did was I didn't realize the need of clarity and details in that message, because that was kind of what I was saying. And you can't sell with what you don't have. So what did our team do? Because I feel like our team does listen. They go out and they bring extreme urgency in bringing product to the lot. And we got stuck in just a hurricane of used car market and bad buying decisions, right? That, I have to own, because again, I didn't give extreme detail inside of that. So like what's changed, I guess, to answer the question, it's kind of like, well, now we're trying to grow back into used car, being a high volume used car player without the economical loss of aging inventory that doesn't have a market demand. And I've always thought like, okay, I can be an F-150 dealer even though I don't have a Ford sign out, right? Like Zach, you and I have both tried this.
For
like,
sure.
why can Auto Express, there's a shout out for our competition. Why can Auto Express have 28 Ford F-150s and seem to sell them, but Bob Rover and Toyota can't 10 miles away? That's been an interesting dynamic in itself.
So what is there any products or technologies that you're using to figure out, okay, what cars do I need to buy? Or just like you mentioned, okay, does your Toyota store, I'm sure, is doing a lot better with different models than a Honda store? Like maybe your Honda store doesn't sell trucks ever, because I don't think Honda really has a truck model.
No, they have that car with a bed on it. What's
Oh
it
yeah,
called?
that's true. Good point.
A Ridgeline.
Ridgeline.
Sorry,
I
yeah,
think
that's right.
Ridgeline.
Yeah, I think it's a Ridgeline.
But what is like the product? Is there any data? I mean, how are you trying to manage these buying decisions?
I think one thing Toyota taught me, all right, inside of the OEM training, and we make fun of OEM training a lot, right? Because it's like, do I really need to do it? But one thing, I do think you do to get some takeaways, and one thing they taught me was a tagline that the best used cars are the best new cars. So shouldn't we be buying used cars that were the best new cars when they were new? So like if you think about that, should I go buy used cars that have high incentives on them? That's a bad buying decision.
Yeah.
Jeep Wranglers, right? I could go buy a Jeep Wrangler at a 90% cost or less right now. But that car knew down the road what incentives, what pricing structure, what urgency is the new car dealer trying to get those off her light. It's like going out and buying a used EV right now. If I can't sell a BZ4X, did I say that right? And if I can't sell a BZ4X new, why
with a
go
$17,000
with a
incentive.
$17,000? Why would I go put 3 on my lot?
I think that's the dynamic part that's so interesting right now in the automotive space is EVs are so new and so controversial in that sense still of people trying to understand that it is scary to own them. I mean, I know we had one dealership that had 13 Teslas, and then Tesla reduced all their prices of MSRP on all their models.
Yeah.
And now that dealer that had so much success with Tesla is left with cars that are anchors because
It
the
shifts
whole
so
market
quick.
shifted. And when Toyota goes from a $3,000 incentive on a BZ4X to $17,000, which is still out there, Roman Toyota, Lafayette, Indiana, if you need a BZ4X.
Do you have one in stock?
We have one in stock, but
Okay.
Again, if you need it, my name's Zach. My email will be tagged. No, but yeah, it shifts
Looking to blow
everything.
that thing out.
Because if I had a used one, luckily we did not, in inventory at whatever value the market was, well, it just completely became unsellable because of where the price shift is. So I think for viewers, I'm going to ask this question, and it would be at least a pull back of the curtain. In 2023, your strategy of selling more used cars, you said you end up losing money in it. What did that look like for the dealerships? How bad of a decision? How good of a decision? Looking at it now, hindsight, what do you see from that decision?
Well, sometimes you get burned chasing, and
For
we
sure.
definitely chased hard. I mean, if you just measured success by volume, our dealerships had a great year last year because I don't think we'll hit that volume number maybe ever. But you also want to stay in business, which means you need to have margin. So, but last year we lost $2 million in wholesale loss just because the market shifted so fast on us, and we were chasing hard and got burned pretty hard by that. But it's kind of in that you have to learn from bad mistakes, and definitely I've definitely learned from that.
So today, what's the shift been? We talked a lot about obviously moving inventory faster. What's kind of the safeguards you've put in place? And I know we stayed in the used car side, but trust me, I want to get into the future too, because I think that's part of your role as the director of kind of inspiring change. So what do you think's the big shift you made to obviously protect the stores and that, and then we'll kind of roll into the future of what's next?
Yeah, I think one of the big shifts right now for me is 2 things. First, embrace the manufacturer sign that you have out front. Okay, so one thing my dad taught me with car business is the sign out front is a license to steal. And I got to kind of break that down.
I was gonna say,
explain that, please.
That might come across kind of poorly.
Every viewer just said, I knew it. Got him.
Stealership. Yep. Do it. Gotcha.
The dealership sign allows you so much more destinational credibility.
That makes sense.
Because people now come to Honda to find a used Honda or come to Toyota. So and what does, the whole steal thing is probably aggressive because I don't think it really changes anything other than maybe we get opportunities to trade for, used
that's
Toyotas.
where my mind went was that.
That's a huge financial gain. But traffic is also the biggest gain. And so you can make bad decisions on late model used cars if they're your brand versus, an off brand that you don't necessarily know or you're not a destination for. Like when a customer wants to buy a used Toyota and they live in Lafayette, I guarantee you more chances than not, they're at least going to give Bob Roman Toyota in their market area an opportunity to see what Corollas or Camrys or whatever they have on the lot. So I think that gives us one thing. We have to embrace that sign out front. The second thing I would say is, what are consumers looking for? So right now we've got increased costs of living. We've got increased costs of assets. In the last 3 years, the average new car price has gone up over $10,000.
Wow.
And for those out there that can do basic math, that's $200 to $300 given interest rate a month in payment. So I think the second piece of where we're headed is having inventory that meets customers' ability and budgets.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
if the average car 3 years ago, was $26,000, okay, we know that's a $400 to $600 payment, pending a lot of things, money down, everything, right? Well, now everything just took this huge bump the last 3 years. We have to be offering customers product that they can afford on the used car lot. So making sure that we're focused on having those $15,000 to $22,000, $23,000 cars, and there's data to back this up, right?
For sure, yeah.
I mean, look at your age buckets. They're rarely cars that cost, $15,000. Rarely. And most of the time, if a car lasts that long, there's probably something wrong with it.
Yeah.
So probably. So, having cars that meet customers' price points and budgets, I think is going to be something that we put a lot of focus on. And I mean, am I asking our dealerships to do something that's easy? Heck no. Our buyers are complaining about the opportunities and lack thereof and how many, proxy bids you have to put in to get that $18,000 Toyota Highlander. Like how many of those are out there? Or RAV4, right? But you can overpay for those cars.
And again, if you have any of those and you're listening to the podcast, but on a serious note with it, Trey, I think it's so true. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I shared with them because we were looking at this with my used car team. Us here at the Toyota location, we've retailed more sub $20,000 cars in 2024 than we did all of 2023 to this point. And we're in the middle of May. And it's just shocking to me because in a year where we didn't have inventory, where used cars were plenty, where new cars were nowhere to be found, we were trying to play car dealership business kind of as you even spoke and fell into that. Versus this year, we've had people, because of not having inventory, trading in a 7-8-year-old vehicle versus a 4 or 5-year-old vehicle. So the decision was to run those two wholesale and just take what you get, or to put them on your lot, figure out how to retail them in a way where they're safe and secure for consumers. And it's been amazing to see the customer shift. So thank you for being the director of operations, because if not, you segue perfect into the future of the podcast for us today. Where do you see automotive in the next 6 months? Where do you see it in the next 3 years? And I think I asked that question because you've alluded to election year, interest rates and inflation, the uncertainty, payments being $200 to $300 more. I mean, I shared with a salesperson downstairs, my brother's in a perfect example. He's driving a Corolla lease. The third year just expired. He extended 6 months. When he comes due in November, December, he's paying $315 a month. The next lease is going to be a minimum of $450. So he's going to have that culture shock, that payment shock of what do I do next? So how do we handle that as an auto group in the next 6 months? And then where do you see the automotive industry in 3 years? There's so much shift out there with Amazon coming into it and manufacturers regulating EVs coming in. So kind of share what you see in the future.
Yeah, I think, the first piece of that is, what's the 6 months ahead of us look like? I don't have a glass ball, but I do have ideas. I don't like ideas, and I don't like, talking about them. So I think, part of it's going to be on the defense side of the ball, right, Austin? What?
I love playing defense.
Austin,
Big defender over.
He's an All-American defender.
Austin.
How, okay, potentially we're going to have interest rates go up or down. We're not really sure. People, I hear people say,
both ways,
what's going to happen? No one knows. But we know we have an election in November. And so there's going to be a lot of things and a lot of people that slow down their decision when it comes to buying a car. When, you're looking at incentive rates or investments accounts right now based on this fear. And that's really all it is, right? It's the fear of unknown. Because at the end of the day, we're going to wake up the day after the election, no matter whether Biden or Trump are in office, we're going to be doing what we do now. And so how do we navigate fear and the unknown of what is, the United States president. And I don't think it really changes a whole lot other than, we have to make sure we do the little things. And so, we talked about this a little bit on our book review this morning, is making sure in times of change that we are focusing on building rapport with our customers, that we're focusing on diagnosing the repair that the customer asked when we came in versus selling them tires maybe, right? So I think this next 6 months, I'd like to see us get back to some of these basics.
Yeah.
This is the Driving Relationships podcast. I'd love to see us get back to training on how we do it and why customers will choose how we do it other than the guy down the road, right? So I think that's kind of short term, but the next 6 months I think is going to be more than ever on how we do it and not skipping the little things, because there are more excuses in the customer mind with the fear of the unknown.
So staying more internally invested in employment, staff development.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And I think playing defense on product. So manufacturer reps won't like to hear this, but I think we also need to be protecting ourselves from aging new cars. Right? And something I started talking
It's very
about.
backwards of what manufacturer would be saying right now.
Well,
They
and
make money when they wholesale to us.
Yeah.
When you're saying aging new cars, what do you mean by that?
Well, data says, and there's brand difference in this because obviously average profit is a big factor in this, but costs are very similar. Your floor plan costs are very similar across brands. But if a new car is on your lot for more than 35 to 40 days, it no longer becomes a positive business decision. It actually becomes a neutral or a loss of business because of your daily holding costs. Shout out to Mark Rogers. What is your daily holding cost? Well, it's all the things it takes to run a business, but at the end of the day, profit margins too. So the faster we turn these cars, and this goes back to our used car strategies, the faster we turn our new and used cars, the better chance we have.
Yeah.
And you have to play defense on the new car side, because if you don't watch it, it can get out of control and you can have 15 Nissan Arias on the lot. We sell 2 a month.
So you're looking at model mix, maybe color mix, and
For
you're
sure.
telling manufacturers, ship that car somewhere else?
100%. If you don't play defense on the allocation day, you're not being a steward of the keys that you have at the castle. I mean, if you're not looking at front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, and you live in Chicago, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, or Lafayette, you're being foolish. If you're not looking at tan interior, how much tan interior do you want on the lot? How many EVs do you want on the lot? How many front-wheel drives do you want on the lot? How many? And then, manufacturers make wholesale profit, higher margins on their higher trims. Okay, so they want to give you as many platinum, titaniums, capstones as they can give you, because they make a lot more on all those features that I like to drive. But again, back to having the inventory that people can afford. Your SE, XLE, those are still going to be important that you have them. So managing that product mix. I was in a meeting 2 days ago with Hyundai, and they're finally bringing back the ability to boss change inventory on new car allocation. That's huge, right? Because again, we're coming out of 3 years where it's take it, just take it. And now we're not. So this next 6 months on the defense side of the ball from a new car inventory, our brands that we represent need to be intelligent with allocation day on knowing trim, color, all those things.
And you've mentioned the brands. So the brands you have, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, Infiniti, Nissan. Am I leaving any of them out off the fly?
Genesis.
Lexus, Genesis. That's correct. So
Yeah.
tied to Toyota, Hyundai.
Yeah.
Next 3 years, who do you see growing the most out of those brands? Who are you excited about? What's the future look like for any of those brands?
Yeah, so I would say, people ask me, what did your grandpa do? Well, he got lucky too. So, like, no one likes to say, I don't hit a lot of fairways, but I get some good bounces every now and then.
True that.
Yeah, it's true.
And you guys like that, but Grandpa was in the right place in the right time in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like, he took this dealership we're sitting in late 60s, and the dealership right before he came on my grandpa's used car lot was the Chevy dealer in town. So whoever was the dealer in 1969 in Lafayette, that's now DeFau Chevy, they could have been the Toyota dealer. And it would have cost them nothing because they were giving away Toyota dealerships. And so my grandpa said, sure. He took a risk, but he also was lucky, and he did it well. So to answer your question, like, I'm excited about the brands we have. My redheaded stepchilds are still pretty good.
Yeah.
But they aren't easy. I'm excited about, obviously, Toyota is a respected, quality, innovative product. They roll out technology at the right time. They don't chase political, legislation, which I think is great. Toyota's investment into EV is definitely showing to be the right decision, as brands like Hyundai peel back on maybe their hopes of what Ioniq was going to be.
Even Ford forcing dealers
Ford's
to take
in
the
trouble.
investment.
Yeah.
I mean, put it on the podcast. Ford built
Breaking news.
Ford. If you haven't looked at this, go look at Oval City in Tennessee, Kentucky. They've spent billions of dollars on 2 EV plants that are identical to themselves. And they're already, they're not even making money yet because they're still in construction. By the time they're done with this investment, EVs potentially could be 10% of market share.
Yikes.
I think you said something interesting about these brands chasing potentially political or other influence instead of maybe just running their business, right? So I do look at a brand like Toyota, and Toyota has done hybrids so well for so long, and they kind of said, well, that's been our business. Why would we change? Yeah, we're still going to research a little bit with this, but hey, let's kind of sit back and and just watch everybody else chase what maybe isn't their core business. So I think it's really interesting. Yeah.
And it's frustrating at times being a Toyota dealer, seeing them always feel like they're last to the party.
You don't feel like they're innovating, right? You don't feel like
at this moment you sit back and you look at it and go, in 2019 they released 24,000 of their patents on hybrids. And we looked at it in 2019. I remember having this conversation, I think, Trey, with you, and being like, this is insane. Like, this is a desperation move. And instead you look back now and go, oh no, you were all in on black and the rest of the market was all in on red, and now you hit and we all look like we were wrong. And that's what's so cool to be with a manufacturer that's there. It's also interesting to see today where they're choosing to do partnerships. So they're not doing their EVs on their own. They're partnering with Subaru. They're partnering with different manufacturers to say, hey, this is going to be expensive and this is going to be needed. There's definitely going to be a part of the market that wants to make this change, early adapters, but let's do it together. And I think that's obviously a very wise business strategy versus being the exploratory dealer, or Ford saying, you have 3 investment opportunities as a dealer. Do you want to go all in, a little, or none? And now going, oh, we're going to actually pull back on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you lose $100,000 per EV sold, right? But I think a perfect segue into a car that you've been driving as a demo, the Kia EV9.
Yeah.
So you have an experience of driving an electric vehicle in the Midwest, as you say. Now, I don't know if you drove it in the cold weather necessarily, but
I got in it coming out of winter.
What has been your review experience so far as someone who's experienced an EV vehicle?
Yeah, so like you said, I've been driving an EV9 as my daily driver, if you will, for the first time ever. I think my last little bit on EV before I talk about the car itself, I think the EV market is a luxury market. Okay, and so when I say that, it is because of household incomes that need it to be able to afford EV.
Mm.
It is, most luxury market, they have another car. It's not their only car.
Yeah.
And so there's a fascinating stat, and I don't want to say it because I want to be factual, but I am going to say this with an asterisk.
We'll fact check later.
Fact check
Barry Bonds.
this.
Shout out Barry Bonds as
Hey,
trades.
fact check this EV stat. 70% of Tesla owners have a gas model in the garage.
Wow.
Let's fact check. Drop in the comments. Feel free to fact check.
If you
us
own
on
a
that
Tesla,
one, so-
please let us know below.
Yeah.
So what's that tell you? Well, okay, I have 2 demos.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about you.
Only 2? I thought you had.
might
Don't you have the Lexus?
I might have more than 2.
The RV.
I might
Don't
be,
forget the RV. The
I might be
motorhome.
picking up a new one next week.
Hang on
Lexus
a minute, yeah.
GX. But
Man, it's good to have your name on the sign.
so I have 2 cars.
3,
I have
4,
an EV9 and I have a Toyota Tundra. And I'll tell you, I have a charger at home and I have chargers at most dealerships. So I am the best customer for an EV plug-in because I have infrastructure, if you will. But I still won't take it on my 5-hour round trip to Fort Wayne because it's not because of the car. Let's talk about EV9 a little bit. I enjoy the EV9. It's spacious. It's quiet. It performs well. It handles well.
Rides well.
It rides well. It looks okay. I don't think it's lame looking, but I also don't think it's the best looking demo I have ever had. But I mean, the performance of the car itself is really good. I've had 0 issues with the Kia EV9. So the quality of the car is great. But again, $75,000 vehicle. How many, even at our top dealership, a Toyota store, how many $75,000 Toyotas do we sell? It's a small percentage of our mix.
Yeah, for sure.
15%, 20% maybe. I mean, now vehicles are getting closer up to that number, but I think it's that luxury market still that is going to be a 10 to 20%. And I always joke, but EVs will never, while I'm in a working mode, EVs will never pay for my mortgage.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about just how hard they're pushed. But I know we spent a lot of times on EV there. The questions that I would have is that 3-year time period. What does the Indiana operations look like? Are we going to grow in size as Roman Automotive? I'd be amiss to not ask the question with one of the operators right here on the podcast.
It's a good question, and I think, I can answer that. We are in growth mode. I mean, we are actively looking at deals, if you will. But it's kind of like my used car experience last year. We're not looking to buy just to be able to say that we bought. I think we're focused on buying within our market areas, which makes it tough, right? Because I could go buy a dealership in northern Iowa. I could do that, right? And I could check the
Small
boxes.
dealer group that's just available.
I mean,
Or
a couple
Florida.
$1 million, no big deal.
Florida, so you can go down there and vacation.
Yeah, that's
or,
more tempting than northern Iowa.
Middle of nowhere, Iowa.
Let me know. I'll be
That would be nice.
Hopefully
You'd
there's a
like
lake.
to extend your influence down to Florida.
Hopefully if there was something in Iowa, there was a lake or something to hang out in.
For sure. Get a boat out there. But we are looking to expand in areas that make sense. So, we know our brands that we already have relationships with. We understand the way they operate. We understand how we can operate them inside of our values, mission, how, why, structure. And so by the time you build in all these checkpoints that we feel like we need to do, I don't think you're going to see us add 10 dealerships in the next 3 years.
Right.
What I would hope is that in the next 3 years we could add 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Right? I think we have the structure. I think we have the capital and to do that. It's just is where, when, and what. That is the game.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be have 2 or 3 dealerships 2 hours from the rest of your markets? We've looked at too many of those, and we're like, hey, we feel really bullish about Kia. I could have bought 3 Kia stores in northern Ohio, so much as I can say, But that's, again, another 2 hours from Fort Wayne.
Mm.
So, like, okay, was it a good deal? Arguable. Still looking at COVID, multipliers.
Sure.
Sure. Good point.
What's going to happen on the multiplier side of blue sky values in the next 3 years? I think that's too, like, you're going to have a lot. I think you're going to have a lot of pain of dealership groups that grew in the last 3 years that paid crazy multipliers, heavily leveraged with interest rates more than 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see us going and picking up a couple good buys, if you will.
Yeah. So, but in the meantime, you're remodeling what you have, right? So, is this kind of a lipstick on a pig situation, or how in depth are we getting with some of these remodels?
By the time that I would say going midway through 2025, all of our facilities will be either image approved or, I say this, cross my fingers, or will be done. And, like, they are really exciting. Like, these are, Lafayette Honda here in town. I mean, we're literally going to, from Sagamore Parkway, by the time that we tear this off, you'll be able to see into our service department.
Whoa.
Like, that's
so like
how,
an all glass front to this.
well,
thing.
all glass front, but what I was meaning was we're literally ripping the whole showroom off. So, like, this isn't just...
Talk about transparency while we work on your car.
You'll be able to see our service shop. We won't have a showroom for, a Honda showroom necessarily, besides temporary. But we won't necessarily have a showroom because we're literally ripping it off.
Yeah.
So, like, we will be open during those times. But it's extreme. I mean, you look, we just had 2 grand openings up in Chicago for Nissan stores.
Mm-hmm.
Those look really well done. And so... they're pretty extreme. I mean, I think only one of them was a ground up build, and that's Fort Wayne Toyota.
I'm wondering, how do you, within these building plans, how do you manage? You're still going to be open for business, right? Like, you're still going to be doing oil changes and selling cars. So what is that? As a customer, you're here for your oil change. Great. Here's your hard hat. Go sit in the waiting area and watch out. Some lights might fall on you. Like, what goes into that decision?
Yeah, you hear the jackhammer for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So, I mean, you got to stay open. These aren't new points. These are, continual dealerships. And so, I mean, it's...
Are you, like, setting tents up on the lot to sell out of? I mean, what does it look like?
So far, we haven't even had to go to the trailer. Which most, will have double wides and the work out of trailers. I mean, we've been fortunate to have plenty of brick and mortar to be able to move, whether that's a dealership, sales department at Fort Wayne Kia working out behind a different dealership, right? Or, sliding over, if you will, to another store. So we've been fine. It's eliminate excuses.
Yeah.
Like, again, buildings are never easy, but you just have to eliminate excuses because the customer, they don't come to work every day like we do or employees do that literally work in that facility project.
Yeah.
I mean, Fort Wayne Kia has been working in a temporary building for 2 years.
Wow.
And so, like, they just need to battle the mental aspect of it, because at the end of the day, you can make a good experience out of an average dealership experience, dealership feel.
It appears the finish line's there for Fort Wayne Kia.
They are. They're within 90 days.
Wow.
For sure.
Well, I wonder if it's time to play the little game.
Yeah, we got a game for you, so hopefully you're ready. So if you didn't hear Trey reference it before, he is definitely an avid golfer, definitely the luckiest golfer we've ever come across. Just as an example, Trey, how much golf did you play before you got a college golf scholarship?
I played probably 6 competitive
Yeah,
tournaments.
so there you go. For some of us who play
Raw talent.
all the time, just raw talent. The coach saw him playing football and said, "You're just an athlete, kid. Come on board." No, complete opposite. Came in, had a couple good tournaments, got a scholarship to play golf. So we're gonna play birdie, par, bogey. So what we're looking for, and your birdie may be better than a birdie, so I'll let you tell me how good it was. We want one thing in your career you've done so far that you would look back and say is a bogey. And you can't use cars, because we've covered that. We need one thing that you say was a par that was like, man, that was a pretty good deal. I didn't realize how good that decision was until I got past it. And looking back, that may have been what saved my round and kept me going.
Yep.
And then birdie, eagle, hole in one, depending on how great of a decision you have. So kind of just walk us through, and I'm going to start with the best, either birdie or bogey, because I don't make pars.
I don't make it. My scorecard's usually not very boring either.
You need 2 pencils for your scorecard.
You might need an eraser because you forget about all the shots it took or bad decisions it took. So my bogey that comes to mind that's pretty recent was endorsing and encouraging pod structure.
Not podcast. Please wait. Wait.
Pod
pod.
structure.
Okay.
We're
Not
good. Job
podcast.
security here.
I thought you were going to get on the podcast and then shut us down while you were here.
Wow.
No.
Man, thought that was
what?
quick.
Okay.
Let me break it down real quick.
Because I got to hear what this is. Yeah.
Yeah. So pod. So we called 2 years ago. We entered into this test pilot phase of what we referred to as pod. And this is a sales department structure that tried. My end goal was speed of the deal. Okay. So there's a lot of people involved in the deal. Could I cut out a layer? And so what I tried doing was I tried cutting out the finance manager. All right. Because I wanted to speed it up. So cut out the finance manager, train and equip the sales manager or the pod leader. Okay. The ability, because they're already in the deal, working with the customer. Why can't they, add a couple protection products, pitch that, and then hit print?
I mean, when you think about it, that's all a finance manager does.
That's all they do.
Want
They
the warranty,
wait.
and then they fill out a couple state forms, and they say, "Yeah, you get them out of here."
Straight up expense.
We're going to have 3 HR complaints after this podcast goes live.
So all they do is hurry up and wait, and they don't do their paperwork right anyways.
Correct.
So with pod, that was the whole idea around it. And I tell you, my opinion of why it failed was technology wasn't ready for it. I mean, we struggled through DR tools. We struggled through CRM, DMS integration. We struggled through, finding the right person as a sales manager too, because now you've got it isn't easy.
Capacity.
It isn't easy, right? So how many deals now can a team pod leader actually do while managing a salesperson and a customer experience? So I'd say pod, I had 3 stores on pod, and they've probably been my worst performing dealerships the last 8 months. And pod could be why, because we've had to kind of reboot. Yeah. So when, change with the pod, when you have change all the time, your staff have a hard time picking up with stride and getting momentum and finding success, which equals in the car business getting a paycheck, right? And then a lot of things can start snowballing when you're not getting paid for a lot of work, and the rest is history. So I would say,
So that's your bogey.
one of my recent bogeys was the experiment of pod in a couple of the stores.
Okay.
So we're done with pod, right?
For now,
Okay.
I'm not gonna
It
say
might come back.
I'm not gonna say it doesn't ever come back, because I still think it would be nice to speed things up. Maybe there's different ways, but we'll see.
Well, but what I would commend you for, I think in leadership is like you're taking that risk, and you took the risk because you thought it would improve the customer experience.
Yeah, it wasn't about employee experience, customer in that sense.
You failed, but at least you tried, right? Because I think there's a lot of dealers out there that are not trying to innovate their experience, and they're not trying to make it better.
Right.
So, all right, a birdie or a par? What's next?
Let's talk about a birdie.
Okay.
These
So-
are your favorites.
Yeah,
They come very seldom with you, but
birdies are impactful. So I like to have fun, and I think one of the birdies that I've been a part of is the employee experiences that we've had. So, one of the things my grandpa loved, an event that he loved, was in August we always would have the cash dash. And so,
okay, you got to tell people what cash dash is, though.
So Cash Dash is an incentive that was just for sales associates, and That's important because it was just for sales associates, and it was tied to the number of vehicles sold in the month of August. That then in September, we had this cash dash event that sales associates would come and pull based on their performance in August, and they'd walk away with anywhere from a couple $100 to, I think one time had a salesperson walk away with like $6,500.
Wow.
True.
Wow.
So that was cash dash. Well, one of the things with family business is, I get to have conversations with my brothers.
Yeah.
And, Brother Ryan is our CEO. And
Brother Ryan.
Yeah.
Brother Ryan sounds like a band.
Yeah.
Because I think it is. Shout out Robbie Saganic.
Or a priest.
So Brother Ryan
Got a lot of shout outs for free.
Yeah. Brother Ryan doesn't really love parties. He's not really a party guy. And when him and I are talking about things we're doing and things like that, one of the things is he's like, I really kind of want to just kill cash dash. I just want to not do it anymore.
Save expense, or he didn't want to party?
He didn't like going to them.
He's not a party guy.
He's not a party guy. Ryan doesn't like getting up and hosting an event. That's just not how he's wired.
Yeah.
Right. Not wrong, just different, as we like to say.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to kill cash dash. And I remember the conversation because him and I were in Vegas on a dealer trip talking about this, and I said, you know what? Let's just remodel it. Don't kill it, because I think there's a lot of employee satisfaction that comes from an event like Cash Dash.
Yeah.
And so that conversation is where Founders Day grew.
So Founders Day.
So Founders Day is now a multi-department party that we have in September now this year. It was October, but it is the same time period. And at Founders Day, Cash Dash is happening as a layer of the party. And so Ryan wanted to kill Cash Dash, and we came and threw some ideas together and was born, this Founders Day, which is arguably one of the best days that our employees and their families, the families aspect of it, can come together and
So
have
fill
fun.
us in, like, who all comes to this?
Because this is like a regional thing, right? Because these dealerships are spread way out.
Yeah, so
right?
this is a group wide thing, right?
So they all attend.
So the whole group comes together one Sunday a year, really.
Where do you host this at? You have thousands of employees.
Well, so we've hosted at a couple different sites. Our first year that we did it, we actually hosted it coming out of COVID. It was the fall of 2020, and we hosted it at Rorman Field at Purdue University, which really was cool. Like, I think back, and that was kind of a milestone event that, a memory. But now it's held at Loeb Stadium in Lafayette, Indiana. But it's just a really nice, clean, large venue that allows us to do what has now kind of become Rorman Games, which the mindset was around the Olympics, and have teams and dealerships come and represent and get points, and we crown a champion, if you will, in different softball tournaments, volleyball, cornhole,
So
things like that.
this is an all-day event, correct?
This is an all-day event. Yeah, it's a long day. It's fun.
So then how are people getting here? You guys actually are providing transportation from Wisconsin down to Lafayette?
We do. We actually have shuttle vans, and we charter buses from Chicago and Fort Wayne. And so, our employees and their families can jump on a bus and come on down for a fun day.
Wow.
At Founders Day / Rorman Games / Cash Dash. So I like to say I saved Founders Day.
And we can definitely sit here and share with anyone that the Founders Day has changed the employee experience.
Yeah.
Because when you're able to celebrate your success in business with your wife, your kids, your family, it allows, at least in my experience, my kids to say, that's where daddy works. That's why he's gone. That's why we allow him to do these things. And I think the impact it's had, at least from what we've seen from our employees here at this dealership, is profound, that if you took it away, you would have a lot of very upset individuals. So kudos for fighting for it, because I'm sure sometimes those fights become messy at times.
Is it worth fighting for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a birdie, I will say, right?
Maybe an eagle.
You saved Ryan from making a double bogey in that case.
And we
too,
probably would
so.
never have known it was a bogey.
No.
No.
You know,
No,
like
you'd moved on and tried to replace it with something that wouldn't have impacted.
it would have been
so-
noise at first, but we would have been quickly moving past.
All right, and a par to wrap it up.
Okay, so before we move on to the par, I'm just curious. Is it weird to wear your last name on like every piece of clothing that you own?
I get that a lot too. You know,
And is it weird to see other people wear it?
Back to one of the first questions in the podcast today, as far as like, you know, it's just something I've always done. I was born into seeing my name on buildings.
Yeah.
And so I don't really think about it anymore. Like people mention it and I'm like, oh, that's right. That is my last
Is it a
name.
problem that all of your clothes in your collection have your name on it?
Yeah, my closet, my wife says my closet is a problem. I mean, it is, you know, it is one of those things where like there are days where I wish I could put my logo on and not go into Lafayette, Indiana with my last name on my chest.
Yeah.
But I think more days than not, I'm proud of
Yeah, for
the
sure.
impact that we're having.
Yeah. And I think it's fun that just how much recognition I get, you know, around someone where, oh, you work for Rorman. Oh, we had a great experience there. Or,
Yeah.
oh, we know Trey, you know, or something like that.
You
So
like to hear those more than you. Let me tell you, I got screwed yesterday at that dealership.
the funniest one, I was at Academy Sports and I'm checking out, and the lady goes, "Oh, do you want to hear about our protection plan?" I said, "No, I'm not interested." She goes, "Wait a second. You work at Rorman?" I said, "Yeah." "I listened to you pitch me on that warranty product when I bought my car from you guys 6 months ago." Fair enough. Let's hear your pitch, and now I feel like I have to do it.
Did you?
Right? So, no, I didn't. But I did hear her
It's
pitch.
a good story.
So, yeah.
Hey, we trained her.
I
through
should
our
have hired her.
experience. I was going to say,
Hindsight.
I'm
I need
thinking
to go
hire her
her
because she remembered something and she tried applying it.
All right, so let's bring it back. So we've had the bogey with the pods. We've had the birdie with the Founders Day Cash Dash party.
Yeah.
What's the par? Because we know pars are really important, right?
Yep.
And pars can be big round savers. Maybe it's a huge putt or a big recovery, right?
Yeah.
What's a par?
I hope this comes across the right way because pars to me, with my knowledge of golf, there are things that you need a lot of to shoot a good score, right? Like, and they're stabilizers. And they, without them, you quit the game. And so without employees mentally in it and not in distress and just complete, utter, you know, meltdown mode, you know, we don't really have a business, right? And so Rorman Restored is our foundation that was created almost 2 years. It would be 2 years that it was created, but rolled out about 2 years ago. Got the idea from Wildman and Josh Wildman, and you know they do this for their employees, and so they connected us with Provision Bridge, which is the engine behind our foundation. And Provision Bridge manages the application process and helps manage the fund distributions. And Rorman Restored really, yeah, it could be a hole-in-one for sure. We've had a hole-in-one type of moments where, you know, you have a party, right? You buy drinks for everyone playing in your group. But, you know, more than anything, I say it's a par because you have to have healthy employees, but it does come with an expense financially. And so, like, you know, these funds aren't from donors, 100% donors, right? We've had great participation from employees, whether that's payroll deduct or one-time gifts. But Rorman Restored is all about helping our employees and their families when life happens, you know. And so it makes me proud to be able to say we've given out almost $2 million in 2 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, it's also $2 million, right?
For sure.
And when if we didn't have Rorman Restored, we'd have $2 million to go maybe buy a dealership. Selfish reasons come into mind. And
Yeah, that'd be difficult. I could see where the par makes sense in that scenario.
yeah.
So 2 years ago, did you have any idea how big it was going to be? Like when you guys rolled it out, I'm curious, like $2 million given back
No.
to employees
In 24 months.
And just so we're on the same page, these employees, you said this third party handles it. So how do they go about getting the funds? Is there like How does that manage it?
So employees know that there's a website. I'm going to keep it private because I don't want the listeners going to the website. There's a website that they can go to and file an application.
Okay.
That application, literally 2 people in the whole company know about it when it comes through. One of them being my dad, and that's not really private because he is kind of the chair of the foundation, if you will. And so he not only, is aware of it, but then he also can pray about it, right? My dad's a prayer warrior for our group for sure, but he can pass on and manage the application process to make sure that, hey, this is really a need, and make sure that Provision Bridge gets the money to our employee in a timely manner so that they can pay that bill, they can get that car repaired. There's so many ways, and I didn't have any idea that we had this much hurt because I give kudos to our employees. It takes a leap of faith to fill out an application.
Yeah,
for sure.
Even though it's just 2 people in the company that know about it, not everybody can ask for help.
And to be transparent, to raise your hand and say, hey, this is hurting. This may be why I'm not as effective at work because of my hurt going on at home. So, I mean, I think the way you phrased it as a par definitely piqued my curiosity in the beginning, but makes total sense of, the $2 million exchange for where it is. We're not changing it, but still, what could you have done? And then today sitting at going, we're not going to change a thing. We're going to double down and continue to grow this. So, it's made an impact. In the daily operations role, I could tell you, I've seen individuals come into my office, close the door, have very tough conversations, and leave feeling like there's at least a chance of hope coming out of that conversation. So it's been very impactful.
Yeah, and just to hear some of the stories like, counseling, rehab, behind on these medical bills, I'm behind on my mortgage. I'd love to come back to work, but I can't afford like a babysitter when I come back. Right. You name it, right? Like countless stories. Are there any that stick out to you since the program started?
I mean, full disclosure, I don't know about them because we do try to keep privacy. And with my dad knowing about, my dad's the chair, and then we have regional leadership.
Sure.
So I am not on that communication channel. So I don't hear about them because we truly keep privacy. I kind of, honestly, I wish I knew more about them because I love, we don't hear enough good things in life. I wish I knew every time we got a car back on the road or fixed a roof from leaking.
It's amazing, though, that you and your brothers, your family, and the company are willing to do that and not have those stories. Because selfishly, I want to know where my money's going to work. And I think there's so many people that want to know what's happening. And the fact that you guys are willing to step back and say, we don't care what the hurt is. We just care that you don't hurt. And if we could be a Band-Aid to help, we're going to help. So
it's good. Well, anything else? You got anything else,
sir?
For Trey?
You have graciously given us plenty of time. We thank you for that.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
And I thank you for getting me into the car business too, and just how cool that story's been, and how much your family's done for myself, and I know I speak for Zach too, and just the opportunities that that you've given us have been really cool. So
it's a true joy to work with friends and family, and man, it's not always easy, right? But at the end of the day, when you know the heart of somebody, you can invest in them and give them opportunities, and that makes it easy. And I think having that transparency and work ethic that, I saw you guys on the golf course, and so I knew it would, I hedged my bet that it translated into the workforce. So.
And I'll end it with this. So before I was in the car business, when I used to call you and leave you a voicemail, it was always like, hi, you've reached Trey. I'll call you right back after I get done selling this car.
That's right. I forgot about that voicemail.
I'll never forget. That was a good one. So
That's true.
thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
It's cool.